Today, my talk's about domestic cats and urban wildlife. So we've all seen the headlines. They're telling us to keep our cats indoors. They're killing millions of native wildlife each year. Our domestic cats are wreaking havoc on the environment and should be contained. But if we look at the data for how they're getting these numbers on birds, mammals, reptiles, and frogs, they're all based on the same previously collected data sets. So they're essentially looking at 6 studies from 4 publications. And importantly, these studies were not designed to determine the proportion of pet cats that caught prey, but specifically only looked at cats that did catch prey. And these data are based on questionnaires, and as you can tell by the dates there, they're quite outdated as well. So what is the research telling us for pet cats? Two papers by Barat, really well conducted, but did target people bordering nature reserves and ornithological groups. They collected data from 135 cat owners and took observations of the prey that the owners have observed their cats to catch. Pattern, there's 3 references that are referred to, and they're all using the exact same data, but just referencing references that are presented in different ways. So workshops and conference proceedings that have all used the same data, just presented in different formats. Truman is an unpublished honours thesis, again using survey form. Now, Wojnarski, who's one of the authors of these papers that come up with these magnificent numbers that cats are killing millions and billions of wildlife, even said for this that it was particularly hard to interpret because the results were quite obscure. So for birds, Barat determined that cats caught 1.2 birds per year if looking at median and 2.5 if looking at the mean, and even suggests that estimates of house cat predation, particularly extrapolated estimates, should be treated with caution. These estimates alone do not prove that prey populations are detrimentally affected. Patton, this work is not peer-reviewed, but determined that cats caught 8 birds per year. And again, regardless that this hasn't been peer-reviewed, it's used in these estimations of cats killing millions of wildlife. And Truman as well, again, not published, an estimated 3.3 birds per year. From this, Wojnarski calculated the average of this and determined that cats catch 4.5 birds per year. So again, these studies, or this study coming up with the estimation of cats killing millions of birds per year, was not designed to determine the proportion of cats which predate. They multiplied the 4.5 by 3 because owners observe only about 30% of the catch. And they calculated that result, which was 15.6. They determined that cats catch 15.6 birds per year. And they multiplied that by 3.88 million pet cats. And this included indoor cats. I don't know how many indoor birds you see flying around that cats can be catching. But this led them to determine that pet cats kill 61 million birds per year. So again, that's including indoor cats. And it's also not accounting for whether the birds catched are introduced or native. And then the media has taken this and implied that this translates to a population effect. At the Australian Pet Welfare Foundation, we're running, or have been running for the past 5 years, a community cat program, essentially through which we are dissecting owned and semi-owned or unowned cats in the community for free. And we have owners do a survey on this so that we can collect a lot of data about whether their cat is indoor, outdoor, do they observe them hunting, what are they hunting. And we also are doing a field study, putting camera traps out every summer and every winter to determine, or help us determine and quantify changing cat population over time. And also we capture wildlife in this as well. So from a subset of the data of 1,500 participants who have filled out the survey, we're actually seeing that almost 65% of people are keeping their cats exclusively indoors. So only about 35% are actually allowed outdoors at some point in the day. So our studies, unlike the others, we're determining the proportion of cats that hunt relative and proportion of prey observed to be caught. So considering all cats, not just cats that are observed to hunt. Of outdoor cats, only about 39% are actually observed to hunt. So 61% of the cats are not actually being observed to hunt at all. And then, what are they hunting? Our data from 189 people is showing us that they're largely catching insects as the predominant prey, lizards and geckos, rodents, and not many are going for the birds. So a study in New Zealand by Bruce et al. Was looking at video cameras on cats to look at the behavior that they're doing. So these cats, only 23 of them, or 62%, engaged in predation. 40 of these 121 events resulted in prey capture. So again, not all predation is successful. And they found that cats were largely predating on insects and skinks. So really similar to what we're finding, where those insects and skinks, reptiles are sort of the predominant prey captured. They found no mammals, birds, or amphibians captured. Only one already deceased bird was scavenged. So the cat did not hunt, kill it. So what might be the reality for our pet cats? So if we do some number crunching with our data based on what we're observing, the Wojnarski estimation of 61 million birds is likely a 16 times overestimation. So they assumed that all 3.88 million pet cats predate on average 15.6 birds per year, giving us that 61 million birds caught by pet cats a year. Based on our data, where we had almost 65% of cats being kept indoors, if we be a bit conservative and work on 50% of cats being kept indoors, that leaves 1.94 million cats having access to outdoors. From our data, only about 12% actually predated on birds. So this gives us about 3.7 million birds that cats are predating on. And that is only 1/16 of what they calculated. Now, we also can consider that the birds that cats are catching or hunting are not necessarily all native, and other studies show anywhere between 73 to 88% of what is caught is native. So if we factor that in, our calculation falls to around 3 million birds per year caught by pet cats. So significantly lower than the 61 million estimated by Wojnarski. So from this, the evidence seems quite flawed as regards the numbers that pet cats are killing in terms of birds. And no population effect has been investigated, but implied in the media. So do we actually have any evidence of a population effect? So there are studies that have explored this, and this example by Grayson et al. Investigated 57 sites across Perth, and they looked at factors affecting passerine bird community composition, and they found no link between cat density and passerine bird species. They actually found decreasing bird population with increasing house density, and increasing population the closer to bushland. And they concluded that habitat destruction and degradation were the critical factors, not cats. In Sydney, a study looked at bird eggs and nests in forest patches through Sydney, 24 patches. They found that avian predators attacked all patches, all 24. Black rats attacked 10, and no nests were attacked by cats. And actually that there was reduced nest predation associated with higher cat activity. Another study investigated the diversity and abundance of birds in urban forests, and they hypothesized that native bird diversity would be positively affected by the amount and quality of native forest, but negatively affected by rats, possums, and cats. They found that avian richness increased when habitat was more natural, it was less disturbed. However, contrary to their prediction, the invasive species, including cats, had no significant effect on native bird species richness and abundance. They hypothesized that birds remaining in urban forests and cities cope well with predation, and that habitat restoration is really important to native bird species. So why do we get this disparity between the reports of how many birds are killed and a population effect? Some studies have shown that cats are opportunistic. So they're actually collecting birds, like that study from New Zealand showed, that are already deceased or are injured, have hit windows, hit by cars, those sorts of things. So they've concluded that cats are opportunistic hunters and tend to remove those sick or old birds that would not have contributed to the next breeding season. So for our mammals, again, these big numbers that they're getting about how many mammals pet cats are killing per year are based on these same studies, which were designed to determine the relative proportion of prey observed to be caught. So again, not designed to determine the proportion of cats which predate. They're suggesting that cats kill or hunt 8.6 mammals per year. They multiplied this by 5 because we only observe about 20% of what is predated on, and suggest that that's 46 mammals per year. And again, they're multiplying that per cat, so multiplying by the 3.88 million pet cats. Again, not accounting for the fact that a good chunk of cats are actually maintained indoors. And they're suggesting that 178 million mammals are predated by pet cats annually. If we apply this same calculation logic, but assume that 50% of cats are indoors, and based on our data and other studies, we can do 1.94 times 46 and get 89 million. And again, this isn't taking into fact that not all cats hunt, and this can depend on age and sex and proximity to forest and things like that. And again, this doesn't also factor in what exactly the cats are predating on. But some studies are showing that the mammals that cats are predating on is overwhelmingly invasive species such as mice, rats, rabbits. So is there any evidence of a population effect for our mammals? A Perth study looked at diversity of native mammals across 3 different bushland sites that have different conditions imposed on them. One area had no cats allowed at all, they were banned. One required cats to be kept indoors at night and wear a bell. And then the other site had no regulations at all. What they showed that numbers of native wildlife or medium-sized mammals were very similar across all sites. There was one smaller antechinus that was highly susceptible to cat predation, and this was mostly at the unregulated cat site. However, the total mammal numbers caught at the unregulated site exceeded other sites, but the vegetation was denser. And they concluded that pet cats were not a major influence on species diversity or abundance, and that vegetation characteristics were actually the important factor. In Melbourne, a study showed bandicoot numbers were highest at sites that were most urbanised, where cats were also prevalent, and numbers were lower in nature reserves, where cats are also largely absent. Brisbane City Council would love to have shown us that free-roaming cats are full of native species. They themselves did a study and looked into stomach contents of feral cats and reported that, unfortunately, the results of the stomach examination provided no insight into the impacts of cats on wildlife, with only prey species being consumed, the black rat. Another study looked at the stomach contents of cats killed in pounds, and again, cat food, house mouse, and carrion. No species of conservation concern were found in these cats. So we knock down all the land, build our houses, build bigger cities, and we say, look what the cat is doing to all our wildlife. Protecting species of conservation concern should be our first priority, and we should be doing this with good data and good science. So at the Pet Welfare Foundation, that's what we aim to do. We're looking at building the evidence by looking at a range of cats and accounting for indoor, outdoor, age, all those sorts of things to come up with more scientifically robust estimates. What are our pet cats actually doing? And are they having a significant or any effect at all in terms of native species populations? We run a variety of studies. We have our overarching program of the free desexing that's been ongoing for 5 years and will for a further 5 years. We put camera traps out every summer and every winter. We have tracking collars on cats, GPS data, video collars, and participants in our desexing program complete a survey during which we ask them all about their cat, whether they're indoors, outdoors, the extent of their outdoor access, whether it's day, night, what they're fed, if it's raw meat, regular cat supermarket meat, food products, and all those sorts of things, and whether they engage in hunting and estimation of their numbers and observations. So with our desexing, we're trying to determine if free roaming cat numbers are declining over time. And this is some raw data. So keep in mind, this hasn't actually been fully cleaned or analyzed, but this is showing potential reduction over time. We're tracking restricted matter cats, which are those cats that are not owned, but we have a special permit for which we can desex them and return them to where they were found, as long as there is someone responsible for feeding them. So this is from a cat looking at their movement patterns over 5 weeks, and you can see they remain within their home range, or their home range is 0.2 to 0.4 hectares. They consistently return to this food source. So they do take some trips further afield, but they maintain return to that food source. For a visual, 0.2 hectares is about the size of 4 basketball courts. So 0.4 is 8 basketball courts. Again, this is another cat, and this is looked at over 8 weeks. They're 95% home range. Again, that 0.2 to 0.4 range. Again, taking trips out, but they are always returning to that food source. So we're currently equipping cats with video cameras and GPS trackers, so pet cats, and looking at what they do. We're currently doing that, analysing the data as it comes in slowly. So far, we have seen cats that live near bushland reserves that don't actually go into that bushland reserve. And again, they spend most of their time within their own home environment. So from our perspective, it's time to do things scientifically and humanely to decrease cats and the costs and the impact on people and wildlife. But we want to do that with robust, scientifically valid, evidence-based data. Thank you.